Hello and welcome to this Dr. Ross Maths key skill video on identifying regions in 2D indicated by two inequalities in this particular form. Now let's just think back to what we mean by kind of simple inequalities. If I was to write, for example, x is greater or equal to 4, what that means is x can be any value that is greater or equal to 4. So the values it could be, for example, x could be equal to, well, 4 itself, because 4 is greater or equal to 4. But it could be bigger values, so x could be 5, x could be 6. It could also be decimals if you allow it to be decimals. So we could have like 5.5, because 5.5 is greater than 4. And we get infinitely many values. Now we can actually think about inequalities in terms of x and y and plot them on an xy plane, on a sort of coordinate grid like this. So let's just think about individual points first, and then we'll think about the region we get. Can you think of a point where the x value is greater than 2 and the y value is less or equal to 1? So let's think about some possible coordinates, and then we'll sketch the region. So what could the x value be? What could the y value be? So think of any x value which is greater than 2. Well, 4 is greater than 2, for example, so that will do. And we've also got to make the y value less or equal to 1. Can you think of value of y that could be less or equal to 1? Well, 0 is less or equal to 1, so we could get the point 4, 0. So if I just put a little cross at the point 4, 0, it's here. So this point would satisfy both of these inequalities. Now we could think of lots of other points. We could have, for example, this point here, because here the x value is 4, which is greater than 2, and is the y value, which is 1, less than or equal to 1. Well, 1 is equal to 1, so yes, it does satisfy that. And you can see that we're going to get lots of different points. And as you draw these different points, it's actually going to form a region of points. Now the way we can do this is to sketch each of these lines. So let's first draw x equals 2, so we're just going to ignore the inequalities symbols first, and y is equal to 1. Now we saw how to draw lines like that before. X equals 2, that's just a vertical line that cuts the x-axis at 2. If x equals 2, it's going to cut the x-axis at 2. So it's going to go through this and cut the x-axis at 2. Now there's a little extra detail here. If you want to draw the line x equals 2, yes, it looks like that, but it's saying that x is greater than 2. That means x can't actually be equal to 2. And if that happens, you actually have to draw a dotted line. And what that's saying is x can be any value greater than 2, but it can't be 2 itself. And the dotted line sort of implies that you can't be on this line itself. But if x is greater than 2, you can actually be anywhere to the right of this line. So if I'm anywhere in this region over here, like if I'm here, for example, the x value is 3, that's greater than 2. If I'm here, for example, the x value is 4, it's greater than 2. So anywhere this side of the line where x is greater than 2 will be in our region. Now we've got to do the same for y. We're going to draw y equals 1, y equals 1. Now that is a horizontal line that cuts the y-axis at 1. Now this time y is less or equal to 1, so it can include 1, and if it's less or equal to, you do a solid line. So I'm going to have a solid line going through the y value of 1 on the y-intercept. And let's think, what side of this line are we? Well, y can be any value less than or equal to 1. So y, for example, could be 0. So the y value could be 0, it could be minus 1. So you can see we're going to be below the line. Now, let's combine these two restrictions. We have to be right of this line here. You can see that arrow there. And you have to be below this line here, so below this line. And that's why I think it's really helpful to have these arrows. What regions does that give us? Well, if we combine that, we're right of here and below here, that's going to be this region here. So I'm just going to shade the region that's right of that line and below that line, and that is the resulting region. So just to summarise, you draw these two lines, but replacing these symbols with equals. So we draw x equals 2, y equals 1. We've drawn those two lines, and then you work out what side of the line you are. If x is greater than 2, then the x value has to be greater than 2, so you're right of this line. And if y is less equal to 1, it's 1 or less. The y value is 1 or less, so it's below this line, and then you combine those two restrictions.